Hi everyone. Welcome to one more lecture of the Phase B of this self-knowledge course. Today we will be studying a very interesting topic, in which we will understand what that character who has been known as Lucifer, devil and Satan really represents. Until now we have understood Lucifer as we have been, ignorantly, taught to understand God, as entities external to us. But today we are going to understand that just as God is our own inner being, the light within us, our inner master and guide, so Lucifer is an aspect of our psychology. He is our tempter and therefore, our psychological trainer, whom we must constantly overcome in all his temptations. When we defeat him, we develop strength, love, virtues, powers and faculties that otherwise we could not develop. However, we will see that he unfolds into two other aspects that we must also understand and overcome, to advance on our path to enlightenment. And these are the devil and Satan. Much has been said about the devil, enough has been written on this subject, but few have really explained it. The origin of this myth must be sought in the initiatory crypts of the past and in archaic caves. Throughout the conferences we have seen how many allegories or characters found in the sacred books really come to represent inner aspects, which cannot be understood when we take the sacred text's dead letter. We have seen how many of these characters actually symbolize aspects of our own being. And it is consistent when studying the different sacred texts that have existed in different cultures and at different times, from the Sumerian, Babylonian, Egyptian, Greek, Muslim, Judeo-Christian, etc. We see that basically the same principles and the same forces are found in all different cultures and religions, although the characters vary in their names. That triad known as Father, Son and Holy Spirit in Christianity, is known as Osiris, Horus and Isis in the Egyptian mysteries, and as Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva for the Hindustani. Or we see how that Christic force that is latent in all of us, is represented in different cultures with the name of the great masters, who in those cultures incarnated this force, and came to teach the path of Christification. Horus himself in Egypt, Krishna in India, Hermes Trismegistus in Greece, Buddha in Nepal, Jesus in Israel, Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, etc. We also see how iconic characters like Adam and Eve actually symbolized a transcendental aspect that was experienced during the third race that inhabited this planet, when the transition from being androgynous to beings with divided sexes, opposite sexes, took place. The division into opposite sexes, into opposite polarities, generated a third force, which was attraction or sexual desire. And it is in that third force, desire, in which we went to find that forbidden fruit, accompanied by that tempting serpent, that tempted people to eat the fruit, that is to reach fornication. And from there, to create the legion of psychological eyes that we currently have, and where we have the raw material to get up and drag wisdom. Right in all that symbolism of the serpent, temptation, the fall of man, etc., is where we find the origin of what we currently know as Lucifer, devil and Satan, and that today we are going to seek to clarify a little. We know Lucifer as darkness, the opposite of light. And being God the light, we know Lucifer as the opposite of God. But what is interesting is to analyze the duality, and understand how in its origin, both are part of the same thing. Light and shadows are a harmonious antithesis, whose finality or synthesis is wisdom. So we should start by analyzing that the reason why we, sparks of light, were vomited out of the Absolute and sent to this cosmic manifestation, was so that we would gain wisdom. A spark in the Absolute without any knowledge of good and evil, is an innocent spark, incapable of fully understanding the magnificence of its being. Our primary problem was innocence as a lack of wisdom, as a lack of direct experimentation. And that wisdom is only obtained by experimenting the contrasts. Who has only eaten sweets in his life, could never recognize that what he eats is something sweet, if he has never experienced what is bitter. No one could ever recognize that what they are experiencing is the highest level of bliss and fulfillment, if they have never experienced pain and degeneration. It wouldn't be able to understand what it means to be complete, to be a perfect multiple unity, if it had not previously been subdivided into a whole legion, into an imperfect multiple unity. That is why we came to this cosmic manifestation, that is why our being, which is light, unfolded itself, and the reflection of that intimate logos, which is in us what is real, what is ineffable, it was the particular shadow of him, existing within ourselves, here and now. It should be noted that Lucifer is a part of our being, it is the reflection, or shadow, of our own being, and resides within us. This shadow or logoic reflection comes to fulfill a function at the very bottom of our own consciousness. And this is to lead us to experience everything that is opposite to light, which is ignorance. And this because the Lucifer in us is the desire, and being the desire, is the psychological self in each one of us. Therefore, the first function of Lucifer was to lead us to fall into temptation. We find Lucifer in his aspect of devil, in the tempting serpent of Eden. And this happened to lead us through desire to experience the path of ignorance known as good and evil. The tree of good and evil is the ego. Each of those sparks of light, that constitute the 97% of our essence, was trapped in each of the psychological defects that we created through fornication. These defects are the Satans that we now carry within us, since the Lucifer inevitably unfolds in the fatal aspect of the egoic multiplicity, so that the light get caught up in desire. In addition, Lucifer took care that the fire, that is our sexual energy of the Holy Spirit, fell and remained inverted. That inverted fire is the devil in us, the inverted serpent that is our kundabuffer organ. But it turns out that just as Lucifer has served as a ladder for us to descend, he is also a ladder for us to ascend. Since Lucifer's other function is to be our tempter, or psychological trainer. Thus, once we receive this knowledge of the three factors of consciousness, we can begin to deny our desires, which is to defeat Lucifer, eliminate our ego, which is to defeat our Satan, and transmute our sexual energy, which is to defeat our inner devil. Then, when we already have this knowledge, Lucifer now assumes his role as psychological trainer, to constantly put us trials that will allow us to advance on the inner path. Since only by being subjected to rigorous tests would we have the ideal psychological gym, to develop in ourselves the virtues of consciousness. In the psychological gym of human existence, a trainer is always required with the purpose of producing extraordinary powers, faculties, virtues, etc. In what way could the virtues sprout in us, if there is no temptation? During the day we have thousands of desires, thousands of temptations, and latent in each of those desires is our possibility of being and our possibility of moving forward, rescuing the consciousness that is trapped in desire. We feel like attacking or doing violence to someone, a child for example. He did what we didn't want, and we have the desire to verbally or physically assault him. There is the perfect gym to rescue patience and gentleness, if we deny ourselves to satisfy that desire. Then, we see that only through struggle, contrast, temptation and rigorous esoteric discipline, can the flowers of virtue sprout in us. There we are understanding that the function of Lucifer is totally necessary, and essential, so that each one of us can rescue the wisdom that his being came to look for in this wheel of samsara. Lucifer never gives us a temptation that we are not able to pass, because he is justice itself. So that's where you have to ask yourself, where is Lucifer's evil? Without temptation there is no virtue, the stronger the temptations, the greater the virtues if we are victorious. Temptation is fire, triumph over temptation is light. The important thing is not to fall into temptation. Lucifer is a ladder to go down, and a ladder to go up, and to be able to work and dissolve the ego in the laboratory of sexual alchemy. If already having this knowledge, we decide at will to fall into temptation and satisfy our egoic desires. If knowing the power of sexual energy, we don't refuse our desire to continue experiencing the pleasure of fornication, then we will end up descending to terrible levels, terribly developing the kundabuffer organ, becoming demons, black magicians, negative entities, awakened in evil. But by defeating Lucifer, by defeating the dragon, as it has been represented in many cultures, we can crystallize within ourselves the three primary forces of the universe, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, allegorized by the trident becoming in solar gods. We must understand that in this dual world everything is bipolarized, and that likewise darkness, being another aspect of everything, is bipolarized. Positive darkness unfolds into negative darkness. Positive darkness, or superdarkness, is the darkness of silence and the august secret of the wise, in which we are working on ourselves and learning to silence everything that our being is giving us, in order to steal from darkness, the light that will lead us to complete enlightenment. While the negative darkness, or infradarkness, is the darkness of ignorance and error, into which we fall every time, we give in to desire and feed our psychological defects. That is how we fall into the deepest pits of degeneration, vice, cruelty, idolatry, sorcery, domination of others, abuse of power, etc. In us is, and always has been, the decision: either we go up or we go down. If we decide to go up, then we will start this inner work, this fight that is not against external powers but against ourselves, against our own devil and our inner Satan. From those Satan or psychological eyes, from that devil or inverted fire, we will go on rescuing the light and the fire that Lucifer will give us each time we defeat him in temptation. Every time we refuse a temptation, we rescue those trapped sparks of consciousness, and the sum of these will result in the birth of the Christ in us, which in the work of the second mountain, through the Luciferian fire, will allow us to reduce the ego to ashes. So, analyzing all this, we see that the devil is not that dark character created by the dogmatism of some dead sects, that have seated him on a throne of ignominy to frighten the weak and subdue them. We must get rid of so many fanatical concepts and beliefs that have been instilled in us to keep us submissive and fearful, and in that way take advantage of us and dominate us. We must awaken to our inner reality. Satan, Lucifer, the devil, is the reflection of our own intimate being, in ourselves and within our consciousness, here and now. The fight is not really between good and evil, but between knowledge and ignorance, since both, good and evil, are the two faces of ignorance of the ego. Consciousness is beyond the concept of good and evil. Consciousness is the righteousness, the center, the balance, the light, the truth. That is the true struggle that occurs from moment to moment within us. Let's see some representations of Lucifer, the devil and Satan, so that we understand their symbolism. The most common way in which the devil has been represented is in the form of that red figure with a dragon's tail, animal legs, horns, long nose, beard and trident. If we analyze these characteristics according to the astral symbolic language, we will realize what is really being represented. The color red is related to the sexual energy. The dragon's tail represents the kunda buffer organ, which is generated by fornication. The animal legs are a result of the loss of our human state, and the fall to the condition of rational animals, in which we find ourselves due to fornication. The horns represents the wisdom of evil. The long nose represents lust. The beard represents the power in the word that the ego acquires by feeding on our energy. And the trident pointing downwards represents the inverted trinity. Satan is nothing other than our egoic multiplicity. He is our inner legion, each one of our eyes or negative forms of being, which internally have horrible and truly demonic appearances. And likewise, internally they give us a horrendous appearance. If you want to know how you really look like right now internally, ask your inner being before a mirror in the astral plane, to allow you to see yourself as you really are. You will see that no matter how virtuous or good you think you are, the reality is that as long as we have all the ego alive inside us, our internal appearance is horrible. Lucifer has been represented in different cultures with the image of the dragon. The symbol of the dragon was taken from those gigantic flying reptiles that actually existed at the time of Lemuria and Atlantis. In Egypt, the midday sun, the sacred absolute sun, was always symbolized by Osiris, while his shadow, his reflection, his Lucifer, is found allegorized by Typhon. In the Greek mysteries, the spiritual sun, the creator demiurge, was always represented by Apollo, while his shadow, his Lucifer, his Satan, his divine reflection, is allegorized by Python. In the Apocalypse of St. John, the resplendent Christ's sun is always symbolized by Michael, the warrior divinity, while his cosmic shadow is personified by the red dragon. In the Middle Ages, the Logos was allegorized with the personality of St. George, while his shadow is symbolized by the dragon. And this is because overcoming the dragon, killing the dragon, is urgent when one wants to be swallowed by the serpent, when one wishes to become a serpent. This means coming out triumphant in all the temptations placed by the dragon, eliminating the ego, all the psychic aggregates that compose it, reducing all the memories of desire to cosmic dust, etc. Thus, every true self-realized becomes a true dragon of wisdom. In Greek mythology, Lucifer was also represented as Prometheus, that Titan friend of mortals, honored mainly for stealing fire from the gods and giving it to men, and therefore being condemned to be chained to the rock. In this symbolism we see how Lucifer, being the faithful of the scales, the giver of light and fire, unfolds in the fatal aspect of the egoic multiplicity. Chaining himself to the hard rock that represents sex, sacrificing himself for us, subjected to all tortures, to give each of us the necessary situations, so that we can draw wisdom from this wheel, and rise up as Christs or masters. We know that there are two trees, the tree of life that is the tree of the creation of the existential bodies of the being, and the tree of the wisdom of good and evil, which is the knowledge of the ego. Both have common roots, and that root is sex. That is why Prometheus is tied to the rock, sex, because Prometheus Lucifer is in charge of educating us in sex. There he must submit us to a rigorous training through the most severe temptations. Since we must take supra-sex to very high levels of purification for the work of the second mountain. And it is that if there in sex we emerge victorious, the disintegration of the ego inevitably precipitates. Lucifer must make us strong, he must lead us to reach very high levels of control over the sexual apparatus and great chastity, he must educate us in the sexual gym, he must make us athletes of sexual magic. In Greek mythology it is Heracles, or Hercules, who represents the Christ, who frees Prometheus from that rock. Symbolizing this, that it is the Christ who definitively defeats the dragon by eliminating all the psychological defects, including the causal ego. And already Lucifer, as psychological trainer, having no more way to tempt him, concludes his work, fusing with the Christ, and with the Holy Spirit, forming the O of the Mother God. Then serpent swallows its tail, to then be able to return to that primary duality, but now as a perfect duality. And to be able to return to unity when the eagle swallows the serpent, becoming a feathered serpent and absolute man. Then we see how the scaled one, Lucifer, the shadow of the eternal, the intimate reflection of our true divine being, will return to him, merge with him, shine in him. Because deep down, he is he. Well, here I conclude the explanation of this topic. These are aspects that require a lot of reflection to understand them, and often clash with concepts that we already have. But as always, I remain at your disposal to answer any questions. The next topic is the 20th of Phase B, where we will talk about intuition, and how to develop it, since it is the sense that will allow us to listen and understand the messages of our own inner being. Until next lecture.